Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jayam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Tiriyet Nashtaprayeshu Avadreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtike. So continuing with the discussion on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, second chapter. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text number 8 onwards. Swayam Bhagavan Krishna Vishnu Paratattva Purna Jnana Purnananda Parama Mahatva. Krishna, the original form of the personality of Godhead, is the summum bonum of the all-pervading Vishnu. He is all perfect knowledge and all perfect bliss. He is the supreme transcendence. Nanda Sutta Baliyare Bhagavate Gai Say Krishna Avatirna Chaitanya Gosai. He whom Srimad Bhagavatam describes as the son of Nanda Maharaj has descended to the earth as Lord Chaitanya. So according to the rules of rhetorical arrangement for efficient composition in literature, a subject should be mentioned before its predicate. The Vedic literature frequently mentions Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and therefore these three items are widely known as the subjects of transcendental understanding. But it's not widely known that what is approached as the impersonal Brahman is the effulgence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental body. Nor is it widely known that the Supersoul of Paramatma is only a partial representation of Lord Chaitanya, who is identical with Bhagavan himself. So this we have to understand. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not an avatar. He's an avatari. He is Krishna himself. So we don't misunderstand his position. Therefore, the descriptions of Brahman as a effulgence of Lord Chaitanya, Paramatma as his partial representation, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as identical with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, must be verified by evidence from authoritative Vedic literatures. So it must be there. The author wants to establish first that the essence of the Vedas is the Vishnu Tattva, the absolute truth, Vishnu, the all-pervading Godhead. The Vishnu Tattva has different categories, of which the highest is Lord Krishna, the ultimate Vishnu Tattva, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita and throughout the Vedic literature. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is described as Nanda Sutta, the son of King Nanda. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that Nanda Sutta has again appeared as Lord Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he bases his statement on his understanding that the Vedic literature concludes that there is no difference between Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This the author will prove. If it is thus proved that Shri Krishna is the origin of all tattvas, truths, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and there is no difference between Shri Krishna and Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it will not be difficult to understand that Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also the same origin of all tattvas, the same absolute truth as he is revealed to students of different realizations is called Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So it's the same absolute truth, absolutely the same. Prakasha Visheshiteha Dhare Tina Naam Brahma Paramatma Ara Swayam Bhagavan. In terms of his various manifestations, he is known in three features called the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the original personality of Godhead. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained the word Bhagavan in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. The personality of Godhead being full of all conceivable and inconceivable potencies is the absolute supreme whole. Impersonal Brahman is a partial manifestation of the absolute truth, realized in the absence of such complete potencies. So the first syllable of the word Bhagwan is Bha, which means sustainer and protector. The next letter, Ga, means leader, pusher, and creator. Va means dwelling. All living beings dwell in the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord dwells within the heart of every living being. Combining all these concepts, the word Bhagwan carries the import of inconceivable potency in knowledge, energy, strength, opulence, power, and influence, devoid of all varieties of inferiority. Without such inconceivable potencies, one cannot fully sustain or protect. Our modern civilization is sustained by scientific arrangements devised by many great scientific brains. We can just imagine, therefore, the gigantic brain whose arrangements sustain the gravity of the unlimited number of planets and satellites, and who creates the unlimited space in which they float. If one considers the intelligence needed to orbit man-made satellites, one cannot be fooled into thinking that there is not a gigantic intelligence responsible for the arrangements of the various planetary systems. So if to send, like, not too far, I mean, maybe 2-3 days ago, ISRO sent so many satellites into the space, right? And it made such a big deal that so many satellites were sent, and very, very heavy rocket was launched, and this and that. So much of intelligence went into doing this. So much of time it must have taken, with all the calculations and programming and whatnot, whatever it is required. And when people say, oh, all the satellites and all the planets in the universe, they're floating without any intelligence behind it, it just happened on its own out of Big Bang, it's a ridiculous statement. That's what Prabhupada is saying. One cannot be fooled into thinking that there is not a gigantic intelligence responsible for the arrangements of various planetary systems. And not just the arrangements of various planetary systems. There is life on every planet, and there is sustainment of life on every planet. That is even more amazing thing that Krishna has created. Can scientists create life in the satellites that descend in the outer space, and it sustains on its own? No. This is Krishna. This is the Supreme Lord. And this is just one creativity or one aspect of his supremacy. There is no reason to believe that all the gigantic planets float in space without the superior arrangement of a superior intelligence. This subject is clearly dealt with in the Bhagavad Gita, where the personality of Godhead says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in the orbit. When Krishna says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in the orbit, doesn't mean Shyam Sundar Krishna is there in each and every planet, and he has nothing to do. No, Krishna has his devotees to have his pastimes with. Krishna enters into each and every planet, each and every atom in the form of Paramatma. So were the planets not held in the grip of the personality of Godhead, they would all scatter like dust in the air. Modern scientists can only impractically explain this inconceivable strength of the personality of Godhead. Impractically explain. They say, oh, it's a gravitational pull. That's all. That's the one word they have. Where is it coming from? And some religions say, oh, God is holding the earth, which is fine. This is what here it says. I enter into each planet, And by my energy, they stay in the orbit. So he's holding the earth, or his energy is holding the planet. Pretty much the same thing, but when they say God is holding the earth, means they say the earth is not rotating and not revolving around sun. But this is not what science has proved. So earth is rotating on its axis and it is revolving around the earth, around the sun, and it is being held in its position by the force of the Lord, by his energy. Everything is true. Holding in the place, holding the earth doesn't mean it cannot rotate and it cannot revolve around the sun. But just taking some part of the instructions in the scriptures, not understanding it completely, that messes up the whole thing actually. The potencies of the syllables ba, ga, and va apply in terms of many different meanings. Through his different potent agents, the Lord protects and sustains everything, but he himself personally protects and sustains only his devotees. So personally, he protects and sustains only his devotees, just as a king personally sustains and protects his own children while entrusting the protection and sustenance of the state to various administrative agents. So this is his potency. Because it has been said earlier, sadhu hirdayamayam, sadhu nam hridayamta. Means my sadhus, my devotees live in me. Means in their heart I am living and they live in me and I live in them. The Lord is the leader of his devotees, as we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, which mentions that this personality of Godhead personally instructs his loving devotees how to make certain progress on the path of devotion, and thus surely approach the kingdom of God. The Lord is also the recipient of all the adoration offered by his devotees, for whom he is the objective and the goal. For his devotees, the Lord creates a favorable condition for developing a sense of transcendental love of God. Sometimes he does this by taking away devotees' material attachments by force and by baffling all his material protective agents. For thus the devotee must completely depend on the Lord's protection. In this way, the Lord proves himself the leader of his devotees. So different words or syllables, ba, ga, and va, Prabhupada is explaining. So he is a leader of his devotees. A leader in the sense that he protects his devotees, he takes care of his devotees. The Lord is not directly attached to the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world, for he is eternally busy in enjoyment of transcendental bliss with paraphernalia composed of his internal potencies. Yet, as the initiator of the material energy, as well as a marginal potency, the living beings, he expands himself as a Purusha avatar, who are invested with potencies similar to his. The Purusha avatars are also in the category of Bhagavad Tattva because each and every one of them is identical with the original form of the personality of Godhead. So Purusha avatars are three Vishnu avatars: Karnadaksha Vishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Kshiradaksha Vishnu. The living entities are his infinitesimal particles and are qualitatively one with them, one with him. They ascend into this material world for material enjoyment, to fulfill the desires, to be independent individuals, but still they are subject to the supreme will of the Lord. But still they are subject to the supreme will of the Lord. I mean, they are independent in the sense they can desire, or we can desire. Whether it will be fulfilled or not, that's up to Krishna. And to what extent it will be fulfilled, that depends on our karmic bank balance. The Lord deputes himself in the state of super soul to supervise arrangements for such material enjoyment. The example of a temporary fair is quite appropriate in this connection. If the citizens of a state assemble in a fair to enjoy for a short period, the government deputes a special officer to supervise it. Such an officer is invested with all governmental power, and therefore he is identical with the government. When the fair is over, there is no need for such an officer, and he returns home. The Paramatma is compared to such an officer. Nice example. So temporary fair, just like we can say Kumbh Mela. So Kumbh Mela is organized, so many devotees, so many pilgrims, they come, enjoy. But then there is one person who's in charge. Under him, so many different administrative power people, administrators are. But he is in charge. He's in charge and he has powers, governmental powers. But when the fair is over, Kumbh Mela is over, then he returns home or he just looks after his regular duties. So this material world is like a fair. And Paramatma comes, and when the fair is over, material world is dissolved, Paramatma goes back to Mahavishnu. The living beings are not all in. They're undoubtedly parts of the Supreme Lord and are qualitatively one with Him. Yet they're subject to His control. Thus they are never equal to the Lord or one with Him. The Lord who associates with the living beings is the Paramatma or Supreme Living Being. No one therefore should view the tiny living beings and the Supreme Living Being to be on an equal level. So we are not Paramatma. We are Jivatma, will always remain as Jivatma, not going to become Paramatma. The all-pervading truth that exists eternally during the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material world, and in which the living beings rest in trance, is called the impersonal Brahman or Brahmjyoti. Text 11. Now this verse comes from Srimad Bhagavatam. Vadanti tattva tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam rameti paramatmeti bhagvaniti shabdyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth say that it is non-dual knowledge and is called impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma and the personality of Godhead. This Sanskrit word appears as the 11th verse of the first canto of second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Suta Goswami answers the questions of the sages headed by Shaunak Rishi concerning the essence of all scriptural instructions. Tattva-Veda refers to persons who have knowledge of the absolute truth. They can certainly understand knowledge without duality because they are on the spiritual platform. The absolute truth is known sometimes as Brahman, sometimes as Paramatma, and sometimes as Bhagavan. Persons who are in knowledge of the truth know that one who tries to approach the absolute simply by mental speculation will ultimately realize the impersonal Brahman. And one who tries to approach the absolute truth through yoga practice will be able to realize Paramatma. But one who has complete knowledge and spiritual understanding realizes the spiritual form of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. So, through bhakti or complete knowledge of spiritual understanding, he understands only Bhagavan. Devotees of the personality of Godhead know that Shri Krishna, the son of the king of Braja, is the absolute truth. They do not discriminate between Shri Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. One who wants to separate the Lord's absolute name, form, and qualities from the Lord himself must be understood to be lacking in absolute knowledge. So one who wants to separate the Lord's absolute name, form, and qualities from the Lord himself. So there is no difference, there is no discrimination between Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. And one who wants to differentiate means he doesn't have full knowledge. He must be understood to be lacking in absolute knowledge. A pure devotee knows that when he chants the transcendental name Krishna, Shri Krishna is present as transcendental sound. He therefore chants with full respect and veneration. When he sees the forms of Shri Krishna, he does not see anything different from the Lord. If one sees otherwise, he must be considered untrained in absolute knowledge. This lack of absolute knowledge is called Maya. One who is not Krishna conscious is ruled by the spell of Maya, under the control of a duality in knowledge. In the absolute, all manifestations of the Supreme Lord are non-dual. Non-dual means there is no difference, no duality. It's all one, it's all the same. Just as the multifarious forms of Vishnu, the controller of Maya, are non-dual. Means they all are same in the sense, all the forms of Vishnu, then they are all Vishnu Tattva category. But there is a difference in terms of how much powers they manifest in their pastimes with their devotees. That's all. Empiric philosophers who pursue the impersonal Brahman accept only the knowledge that the personality of the living entity is not different from the personality of the Supreme Lord. And mystic yogis who try to locate the Paramatma accept only the knowledge that the pure soul is not different from the super soul. See, empiric philosopher, that is the Jnanis, who pursue the impersonal Brahman, they only accept that personality of living entity is non-different from the personality of the Supreme Lord. Yes, the spiritual, nobody is denying that. But they don't know anything beyond that. And that's where they come to the this understanding, everybody is same. Aham Brahmasmi. So aham, that's what they say, I'm that. No, we are not that. We are always living entity. We're never going to become the Lord. And mystic yogis, when they meditate on the Paramatma aspect, they only come to the knowledge. The pure soul is not different from the super soul. It's not different in the sense that we both are spiritual, yes, but I'm not Paramatma. The absolute conception of a pure devotee, however, includes all others. So, like yesterday, we discussed the example of a hill. So, one who sees the hill from a distance, he sees only the blurred or hazy outline of the hill, or maybe some smoke he sees from distance. And then when he comes closer, he sees there are some trees and some rocks, and could be some waterfalls he can see. The top of the snow is covered with mountain, with snow or ice. But when he comes even closer, then he sees there is variety. There are leaves, there are birds, there are animals, there are fruits, flowers on the trees, and so many other things on the hill or mountain. But one who comes closer, he already has covered the other aspects, seeing from a very far distance, seeing from closer, and then being on the hill and seeing it so close. So that's the problem. The absolute conception of a pure devotee, however, includes all others. A devotee does not see anything except in its relationship with Krishna, and therefore his realization is the most perfect of all. And not just that, the devotee even goes further. He wants to serve the Lord. He wants to use everything in the service of the Lord with love. It's not that he says, oh, aham brahmasmi. I'm that. Oh, I'm spirit. Yeah, we are spirit souls, but what's the work of the spirit soul? What's the duty of the spirit soul? It's just like um, all these spiritual seekers, or those who want to make advancement, jnanis and yogis. It's just like they have taken admission in a medical college. So there are tons and tons of people who don't get admission, but at least they have some admission, they have made some progress in spirituality, and they have graduated from medical college, but they're not practicing the knowledge or medical profession. So are they going to be called doctors just because they have graduated and not practicing? So that's what a devotee is. They have understood that I'm a spirit soul and I'm part and parcel of Krishna, but that sambandha knowledge is there, but abhideya, without abhideya, that's not worth it. Abhideya is the engagement in devotional service. So they have understood, they've learned that they are doctors, but now they're working as doctors. So that is the right position. ताहार अंगेर शुद्ध किरण मंडल उपनिषद कहे तारे ब्रह्मस्तु निर्मल. What the Upanishads call the transcendental impersonal Brahman is the realm of the glowing effulgence of the same Supreme Person. Three mantras of the Mundak Upanishad give information regarding the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they state, Hiranyamay pare koshe virajam brahma nishkalam tachubram jyotisham jyotish tat yad atma vidu vidu. And two more shlokas are there. In the spiritual realm, beyond the material covering, is the unlimited Brahman effulgence, which is free from material contamination. That effulgent white light is understood by transcendentalists to be the light of all lights. In that realm, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity for illumination. Indeed, whatever illumination appears in the material world is only a reflection of that supreme illumination. That Brahman is in the front and in back, in the north, south, east, and west, and also overhead and below. In other words, that supreme Brahman effulgence spreads throughout both the material and spiritual skies. So that Brahm Jyoti is everywhere actually. Charma chakshir dekhe yaiche surya nirvishesh jnana marge laite nare krishnera vishesha. As with the naked eye, one cannot know the sun except as a glowing substance. Merely by philosophical speculation, one cannot understand Lord Krishna's transcendental varieties. So, with our naked eye, I mean, just looking at the sun, without reading about it, without really knowing it's all the different aspects of sun, we will just look at it. Just like a little child and looks at, oh, it just looks like a red ball. That's all it is. Hanumanji, he jumped to eat that red ball, red fruit, he thought. It looks very tasty. He went to eat it. But that's not what sun is. Yasya prabha prabhavto jagadanda koti shvashesh vasudadi vibhuti bhinnam tad brahma nishkalam anantam ashesha bhutam govindam adi purusham tamaham bhaja. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impersonal Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. And this is what is the glowing effulgence of his transcendental form. This verse appears in Brahma Samhita. Each and every one of the countless universes is full of innumerable planets with different constitutions and atmospheres. All these come from the unlimited, non-dual Brahman or complete whole, which exists in absolute knowledge. The origin of that unlimited Brahman effulgence is a transcendental body of Govinda, who is offered respectful obeisances as the original and supreme personality of Godhead. So much of variety. Everything comes from Brahm Jyoti, it says. Koti koti brahmande ye brahmera vibhuti, sei brahma govindera haye ang kanti. Lord Brahma said the opulences of the impersonal Brahman spread throughout the millions and millions of universes. That Brahman is but the bodily effulgence of Govinda. Say Govinda bhajiyami teho mora pati taha prasade mora hai srishti shakti. I worship Govinda, he is my Lord. Only by his grace am I empowered to create the universe. And Brahmaji is saying he worships Govinda, so he is his Lord. Although the sun is situated far away from the other planets, its rays sustain and maintain them all. Indeed, the sun diffuses its heat and light all over the universe. Similarly, the Supreme Sun, Govinda, diffuses his heat and light everywhere in the form of his different potencies. The sun's heat and light are non-different from the sun. In the same way, the unlimited potencies of Govinda are non-different from Govinda himself. Therefore, the all-pervasive Brahman is the all-pervasive Govinda. The Bhagavad Gita clearly mentions that the impersonal Brahman is dependent upon Govinda or Krishna. That is the real conception of absolute knowledge. So sun's heat and light are not different from the sun, but they are not the sun. Just like if we get sunlight in our room in the morning, we say, oh, sun has come. No, sun hasn't come. Sunlight has come. If sun comes, the total sun, then there will not be any more room afterwards. So, but sunlight, heat and light of sun are not different from sun, but they are different at the same time, because it's not the sun itself. So unlimited potencies of Govinda are non-different from Govinda. It's Prabhupada used Govinda because Brahmaji had used word Govinda. Govinda Mahadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajam. So he is not using Krishna, he's using Govinda. So therefore, all-pervasive Brahman is the all-pervasive Govinda, but it's his bodily effulgence. Munyo vata vasana shramana urdhva manthina brahmakyam dham veyanti shanta sanyasino amala. Naked saints and sannyasis who undergo severe physical penances, who can raise a semen to the brain and who are completely equipoised in Brahman, can live in the realm known as Brahma Loka. In this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Vata Vatsana refers to mendicants who do not care about anything material, including clothing, but who depend wholly on nature. Such sages do not cover their bodies, even in severe winter or scorching sunshine. They take great pains not to avoid any kind of bodily suffering, and they live by begging from door to door. They take great pains not to avoid any kind of bodily suffering, and they want to go through, because it's a tapasya, penance. They never discharge their semen, either knowingly or unknowingly. By such celibacy, they're able to raise the semen to the brain. Thus, they become most intelligent and develop very sharp memories. Their minds are never disturbed or diverted from contemplation on the absolute truth, nor are they ever contaminated by desire for material enjoyment. By practicing austerities under strict discipline, such mendicants attain a neutral state transcendental to the modes of nature, and merge into the impersonal Brahman. But they don't go to Vaikuntha Loka or to Golok Vrindavan because they haven't performed bhakti, they haven't developed love for Krishna. Atmantarayami yare yoga shastra kai, seha govindera ansha vibhuti ye hai. He who is described in the Yoga Shastras as the indwelling supersoul, Atma Antaryami, is also a plenary portion of Govinda's personal expansion. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature joyful. His enjoyments or pastimes are completely transcendent. He is in the fourth dimension of existence. So although the material world is measured by the limitations of length, breadth, and height, the Supreme Lord is completely unlimited in his body, form, and existence. So he is not limited, just like we have limitations in the material world. Length, breadth, and height, we are limited by that. He is not personally attached to any of the affairs within the material cosmos. The material world is created by the expansion of his Purusha avatars, who direct the aggregate material energy and all the conditioned souls. By understanding the three expansions of the Purusha, a living entity can transcend the position of knowing only the 24 elements of the material world. One of the expansions of Mahavishnu is Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, the supersoul within every living entity. As a supersoul of the total aggregate of living entities, or the second Purusha, he is known as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. As a creator or original cause of innumerable universes, or the first Purusha is lying in the causal ocean, is called Mahavishnu or Karanadakshaya Vishnu. The three Purushas direct the affairs of the material world. The authorized scriptures direct the individual souls to revive their relationship with the Supersoul. Indeed, the system of yoga is the process of transcending the influence of the material elements by establishing a connection with the Purusha known as Paramatma. One who has thoroughly studied the intricacies of creation can know very easily that this Paramatma is a plenary portion of the Supreme Being, Shri Krishna. So now Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is talking about Paramatma feature. Ananta Sphatike yache ek surya bhashe, taiche jive govindera ansha prakashe. As one sun appears reflecting in countless jewels, so Govinda manifests himself as Paramatma in the hearts of all living beings. The sun is situated in a specific location, but is reflected in countless jewels and appears in innumerable localized aspects. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although eternally present in his transcendental abode, Golok Vrindavan, is reflected in everyone's heart as a supersoul. In the Upanishads, it is said that the Jiva, living entity, and the Paramatma, supersoul, are like two birds sitting in the same tree. The supersoul engages a living being in executing fruitive work as a result of his deeds in the past. But the Paramatma has nothing to do with such engagements. As soon as a living being ceases to act in terms of fruitive work and takes to the service of the Paramatma, coming to know of his supremacy, he is immediately freed from all designations, and in that pure state, he enters the kingdom of God known as Vaikuntha. So Paramatma, we know his function or activities of witness and sanctioner. The Paramatma or Supersoul, the guide of the individual living beings, does not take part in fulfilling the desires of the living beings, but he arranges for this fulfillment by material nature. As soon as an individual soul becomes conscious of his eternal relationship with the Supersoul and looks only toward him, he at once becomes free from the entanglements of material enjoyment. Christian philosophers who do not believe in the law of karma put forward the argument that it is absurd to say one must accept the results of past deeds of which he has no consciousness. A criminal is first reminded of his misdeeds by witnesses in a law court, and then he is punished. If death is complete forgetfulness, why should a person be punished for his past misdeeds? The conception of the Paramatma is an invincible answer to all these fallacious arguments. Paramatma is a witness of the past activities of the individual living being. A man may not remember what he has done in his childhood, but his father, who has seen him grow through different stages of development, certainly remembers. Similarly, the living being undergoes many changes of body through many lives, but the supersoul is always with him and remembers all his activities, despite his evolution through different bodies. So Paramatma remembers everything. Paramatma stays with the living entity. As long as we are in the material changing bodies, he stays with us throughout the journey. So he is the closest. We think we are closer to our family members, but they're going to leave us, so we're going to leave them at one point of time. But Paramatma will never leave us. This is his mercy. He's giving us a chance to understand him and come closer to him. And of course, as devotees, we don't serve Paramatma. We don't serve him. We serve either Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayan or Sita Ram, not Paramatma. Paramatma is again one aspect of the Lord to be there. But when we develop love for Krishna, then Paramatma form is gone and Krishna form sits in our heart. But that takes lots of purification. But Paramatma is always there to guide us, to help us. and to witness and to sanction whatever we are doing, whatever our desires are. To the extent, as I said, we have that bank. Suppose our desire, the soul's desire, is to become Prime Minister of India next elections. Well, if we don't have the karmic bank balance to support that desire, so we'll not become PM. We might become some leader somewhere if we have such a strong desire to become a leader, but not the Prime Minister of India. So with that karmic bank balance, and Paramatma is sitting in everyone's heart. And that's why when we say Hare Krishna to each other, of course we are greeting each other with Hare Krishna, that we devotee of Krishna. But when we pay obeisances to each other, we actually pay obeisances to Paramatma in some other person's heart. And when we say Namaste, Namate, who are we worshipping? Namate, who? Paramatma. We are worshipping Paramatma, understanding there is Paramatma in your heart, Paramatma in my heart, and I'm worshipping that Paramatma, and you worshipping my Paramatma in my heart. And that is also one of the reasons when we say spiritually advanced persons, they can see the future and they can see through a person. And that seeing through a person is, because they're very spiritually advanced, means they're very close to Paramatma. So Paramatma sitting in that heart and Paramatma sitting in my heart, it tells the spiritually advanced person what that other person is thinking. So that is being closer to Paramatma. That is an advantage, one of the advantages. So being spiritually advanced, it always helps. And to be spiritually advanced, we first have to realize the position of or the presence of Paramatma. And also, in the story of Ajamil, we studied Yamraj's assistant, Chitragut. He keeps track of every living entity's works and thoughts. And one of the witnesses that gives him the data is Paramatma. There are 10 different witnesses, but one is Paramatma. So we can hide from everybody, but not from Krishna. And as Paramatma in our heart, cannot hide. He knows everything. What we are doing, what we are thinking, he knows everything. Can't run from it. Anyway, I guess we can stop here. See anybody have any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, nowadays the people who do this face reading and writing and all that, they have no connection with this kind of Paramatma and all. No? They're just bogus ones. What do they? They
No,
have no
not
wisdom.
bogus, they have some technical knowledge.
Achha, okay.
Maybe they can read mind or something.
हाँ होते हैं ना जो देख करके.
Yeah, some technical knowledge is there.
But they also have some limitations ना, एक stage तक ही बता पाते हैं. They just can't go beyond.
हाँ,
है ना?
yeah, पूरा तो नहीं बता सकते.
Okay. And another thing, Amrit Mataji has joined us. We added now yesterday. I can see her in class.
Hare Krishna Mataji. But
Is
she
there
left.
or I think she left. She has some work. I think she was saying me. So we'll just put her a message, Anna, in the group. She was there in the class.
She will get all the messages.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mata. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare